So, ladies and gentlemen, the rows are filling. It's great to have you here, that you're sharing this wonderful fall afternoon in Munich with us. It's my big pleasure to be sort of the transition point in one person of the ending DigiMed Symposium and the then starting Digital Health Summit, but we will go into this detail a little bit further. For now, I am the host and very honored and pleased to be introducing the panelists of the last session of the DigiMed Symposium. We're talking about the future of medicine. Of course, the entire day is about the future of medicine, but now we have a little bit more of an outlook, less from the technical side, but a couple of aspects that you could call food for thought and some impressions that can leave you walking out of here or walking into the Digital Health Summit with some things in your mind that you can revolve with. We all are confronted every day with the power and the potential that everybody sees in artificial intelligence. At the same time, we are also confronted with a lot of questions and a lot of risks. Of course, all that revolves around ethics, because in the future, if there's a wrong decision taking by a machine that then affects the life of a patient or the treatment of a patient, everybody asks themselves who's in charge, who is liable, who can be held accountable, and so on. And there is a couple of experts who have been diving into this field, and it's a big pleasure, of course, as the Technical University in Munich. We have the #1 expert here in Munich as one of our professors, and it is my big pleasure as the first, basically, panelist or speaker. Later on, I'm trying to hold on to her for the panel so you can have a Q&A session with her. It is my pleasure to say hello to Professor Alena Bruix, who is going to give us an introduction about horror or utopia, what to expect in AI. So please give her a big hand for the first speaker of the last round in the DigiMed Symposium. Professor Bruix, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this very kind introduction. I have to warn you all, I came back from Japan, I think something like 14 hours ago. I don't know, really. And my intelligence is very much diminished. This is one of those moments where you really wish for an AI avatar that could sort of take over. I'm very grateful that you said that this is going to be food for thought, because obviously in this room, I would never dare to talk about specific examples. Which one? This one? That one? This one, thank you. Or about anything technical. The wonderful thing for me is that I can rely on the fact that most of you will be very much acquainted with what I will be talking about. I will rely on my own work and the work of my own group here at Technical University, where we do lots of very interdisciplinary research with people who develop AI applications, but most of the ethical reasoning is a presentation based on this work. I was until recently the chair of the German Ethics Council, and I, would be very amiss if I didn't present this work to you here today. We spent quite a bit of time, lots and lots of meetings, 400 pages. It's the thickest report the council has ever put out. And don't worry, I won't present the whole thing. I'll just give you the cliff notes. I think I have like 15 minutes for the whole thing, so I'll try to be very brief. Let me start with a few fundamental things. Again, in this room, I don't think this is something that I must stress very much, but it's very important. If we talk about applications of machine learning, if we look at the advances that we've seen over the last few years with generative AI, things that have really exploded very quickly into our domain, and particularly into the domain of patient care. So we're no longer just, fiddling around with protein folding. We're actually getting towards application in the clinical field. We have the algorithms that do risk assessment of individual patients. We have the avatars that do symptom checking with patients, actually outside of organized medicine. We have the therapeutic chatbots that have therapeutic conversations with you and all kinds of things that really, really go into the very core of what we in medicine used to do, just us. And that's no longer the case. So suddenly, really very specifically human activities can be, on principle, taken over by machines. And that's actually why ethicists are interested in this, because in medicine, we are in a field that is a little different from thinking about algorithms in our smartphones or thinking about algorithms that improve our shopping experience or things like that. We are engaged with vulnerable people, with people in very challenging circumstances that take them out of their usual understanding of self, that challenge their identity, that are scary, and where we as experts have the privilege, I would say, to try and support people. So that's something that is special about the medical field. And that's the reason why I will go into these fundamental things just a little. Because you might recall that when ChatGPT came into the world, and we all know we've been discussing artificial intelligence for decades, but that was quite a moment where it came into public understanding. So out of the expert conversations into public debates, in talk shows, at dinner tables, I don't know, with your friends. Lots and lots of people suddenly understood this is something that is very human-like, right? I mean, the Pope in the jacket, in the puffy jacket, Angela Merkel at the beach, suddenly things looked really real. And of course, that's something that's very attractive for us in medicine. It's very attractive in a time when we don't have enough people. I mean, we're just across from the hospital. I know there are lots of people here who run hospital departments, and they will be the first to tell you that one of the big challenges over the next decade is that we don't have the people. 30% of all nurses are going to retire in the next 10 years. 30%. And they are not sort of being replenished at the same rate. So we have to make every use of helpful technology that we can in order to support us in this endeavor. But of course, we are implementing that kind of technology into a very special field. And if you think back when ChatGPT and the other large language models came into being, or came into public understanding, there were some who said, look, this is actually no longer just this sort of artificial intelligence that can do a very specific thing, right? The narrow type, the specific type. This is broad or even general artificial intelligence. And I see nodding, thank you. And I remember that people were talking about, this is it. This is general artificial intelligence, or artificial general intelligence, however you want to group it. This is surpass us very quickly. This is going to be better than us. We are in competition with this kind of artificial intelligence. It might even get conscious at some point. You probably all remember these debates. And the first 200 pages of this report are spent with a philosophical, very theoretical philosophical analysis of these kinds of claims. And it's I will just give you a two-minute, you see, that's where my language center is just gone. A 2-minute Cliff Notes summary, thank you, that was the word I was looking for, of this long and intense philosophical analysis, which says all of these claims are, using the term that the philosopher Harry Frankfurt has introduced, the expert term we use for this, all of these claims are bullshit. And it's actually a philosophical term. It denotes an understanding of something that looks similar to something where we have an intuitive relationship with, but which is indeed something completely different. And so we analyze all kinds of philosophical concepts. We look at what is actually intelligence. Is this artificial intelligence actually an intelligence that can compare to an intelligence that's human? And the answer is no. Because our intelligence is not just computational. It's not just data-based. In terms of data analysis, of pattern recognition, algorithms are way beyond us. They're way more capable. They're much faster. You can never, ever write a speech for your best friend's wedding, for the toast that you're supposed to give, that quickly as ChatGPT can do that. And in medicine, the pattern recognition in imaging, for example, is way beyond human capacity already. And you are the experts on all the wonderful applications that are in the pipeline. There's no way that we can compete with that. But that's just part of our intelligence. Because our intelligence is way more, and that's important in medicine. Our intelligence is also emotional. It's based on interaction. It's social. It's based from the moment we exist. It's based on interaction with another being or with others. It's also historical. And not just with our individual history, but actually sort of a collective cultural history. And it's embodied. It's based on an understanding of having an inner life. And that's also why it can't be conscious, because algorithms are statistics in the end. And you know that much better than I do. But if you don't believe me, believe the Apple study that came out just a few days ago, where they looked whether there was any hint of actual reason in these big foundation models. And there is none. There is not a single trace of that. Of course not, because the substrate isn't there. So algorithms are fantastic machines. They are wonderful tools, but they are not intelligent in the sense that humans are. They don't have reason, and therefore they can never be fully responsible. And that's the main gist, of course, for medicine. So that was the fundamental philosophical stuff. I'm very happy to debate all of you who think that's complete bollocks, because I know it's a very contentious field, and there's always somebody who stands up and says, yes, but they will be conscious someday, and so we can discuss that. But let me come to what we derive from these philosophical discussions. This is actually the 200 pages in 2 sentences, which is like a rule of thumb, an ethical rule of thumb. The use of AI must foster human flourishing, authorship, and action, not diminish it. What this says is pretty much, these are tools that should make our lives better. And that should make the lives of our research subjects better, and that should make the lives of our patients better. And ideally, they should make life of our society better. Not worse. They need to serve us. We use them. We shouldn't be used by them. It's a fancy way of saying these are fantastic tools, but they have risks. So allow me to come back to your wonderful introduction, but it's very important because we overestimate what AI does for us. We mythologize it to a certain degree, and that's not something that I came up with, but a wonderful colleague in AI who said that the other day. And the second thing that we derive from the idea that AI can never be fully responsible in a relevant sense is that AI must never be used to replace humans. And by that I mean full replacement. We can delegate a lot to AI. And we can have distributed responsibility. Don't get me wrong. We will give very important steps in many, many medical fields to these algorithms and to these models, and that's great. But the overall chain of responsibility can never be without human oversight. And that, of course, is also an important issue in regulation. Again, I know this is controversial, but we were very clear on that. Let me just say what this means in practical terms. I wish we had an AI that could sort of adjust for the font. That looks terrible, and I really apologize. What happened to this? You'll just have to disregard it. It's a very pretty presentation normally, but I have no idea what happened here. It looks, is that my jet lag? Is that real? It looks really that bad, right? Okay. Anyway, we talked about 4 areas of application: schools, public administration, public debate. We won't discuss those at all, but we also looked at medicine, which is our joint field. Let me see if anybody can read this. Yeah, okay, this seems to be okay. So the first thing is just a reminder for you. You know this. We shouldn't start with the risks. We should start with the idea why we do this in the first place. And again, even though I have a critical outset to this sort of overemphasis on the superiority of AI, I really don't like that. I love that stuff. I think this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And it will help us solve our demographic problem, and it will help us solve our problem of staffing. Not in the next 2 years, but over the course of the next 10 or 20. So the potential for AI applications in medicine is fantastic. It's actually the easiest case study. If we look at the other case studies, much more difficult to make a really good case for why we absolutely should keep continuing to develop AI as quickly and as intensely as possible. But in medicine is just, there are so many low-hanging fruits. You know this. I put a few here because we talk about a few, you know, research, proteins, efficiency, methodological improvements, blah, blah, blah. You know all of this. Diagnostics, imaging, combined with, I don't know, molecular biology, all these kinds of things. You know this much better than me. Personalized medicine, public health, mapping. And of course, therapy. Lots and lots of applications that are really getting into therapeutic work, into real treatment of patients. But my personal favorite is, of course, admin. Because, thank you, that usually somebody is delighted by that. Because we are overburdened badly by administrative work that takes us away from patients, takes us away from our research. 40% of doctors' work and nurses' work, for that matter, is spent in front of digital screens. And that's terrible. So if we can free people up to return more to the core work of medicine, which we don't want to replace, which is the doctor-patient relationship, which is sort of the human aspect of medicine, that would be wonderful. And I'm counting on you to not just tinker with the stuff that are the low-hanging fruits in terms of the next research grant, but to actually go into the boring stuff. Please, please, please develop the things for the patient pathways, for the planning in the hospitals. I know there's a lot of stuff out there. I go to all the fairs and stuff, and they show me these applications, and I can just say, please, 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 more of that. We need to free people up. There are wonderful things. There are algorithms that can help in palliative care to do the documentation for nurses. In palliative care, which is a very complex setting of nursing, that's the kind of stuff we need. And we say when AI has demonstrated its superiority for a certain task, we must actually introduce it. There's an ethical duty, right? So if it's really better, we need to do it. That's not something that usually gets written about by something that the Ethics Council says because people take us to be more or less party poopers, but that's actually not true. I just stress that it needs to be demonstrated under real-world conditions and not under perfect and ideal research conditions. And I see a lot of nodding here because you guys know what that means, right? The translational valley is important, so we need to make sure it really works when we roll it out in real practice. And that sort of is where we're coming at. It's not made easier, again, by a lot of regulation that we have, but we must get through. And then we must make it available in public healthcare. I had hoped that the minister would be here at this point because this is obviously about funding and politics. So I really hope that somebody tells her. I think she's heard this before. Anyway, so a few recommendations to wrap this up. What do we say? In order to make sure that these applications actually enhance our well-being, agency, and prevent harm, they need to address a few very well-known ethical challenges. And you know all of these. Your eyes are glazing over when you hear these, because they've been sort of hammered down your throats. Classic quality issues, so, you know, the fabrications, the outliers, the problems with very, very strange mistakes that happen. That's just something we have to do for any technology, but of course in AI, because sometimes we have black box issues, it's a little more challenging. That we need to do. We need to also make sure that the data sources aren't biased. You know, all the studies published in Science, you know, if you have a patient collective that traditionally gets worse care, not for medical reasons, but say for racist reasons, that's the Science article, and you train an algorithm on that, it will replicate that and sort of put it, how do you say, my English is failing me, I'm so sorry. Es wird in Stein gemeißelt. Thank you, casting concrete. We also need to make sure that the users, the expert users, don't fall prey too much to automation bias, that we trust every recommendation. So there needs to be critical oversight. That's the point with we cannot delegate the entire decision-making pathway to an AI. And we're getting towards those kinds of systems. We're getting away from the ones that do one particular task to the ones that do several at the same time. That's very dangerous. We need to make sure that we have a human in the loop. You will be the ones to say where. You will be the ones to say what can we actually delegate. Where is the algorithm, if we train them well and blah, 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 always going to be better than a human. And the risk that a human would or the mistakes that a human would make would be worse than the machine, that's wonderful. That's the step we can delegate. But there are steps that we can never delegate. The overall responsibility needs to stay with humans, and also because otherwise we will forget how to do things. We have that in surgery all the time. You know, when keyhole surgery came in, the field got revolutionized, but you still need to be able to open somebody up. Because if you're not, then you have an issue. Right? So even if you train way more keyhole surgery now, you still need to be able to open up the situs in a full way. So the de-skilling is an issue that we have. We need to have, and that's what you've been talking about, I know, and what the project has partly been about, an appropriate balance of data protection on the one hand, because, you know, algorithms can also collect a lot of very sensitive data. And at the same time, we need way, way more and better data. And I've gone on diatribes, and some people in this room have heard me talk about that. And my exquisite hatred of the way we do data protection in Germany, we overdo data protection in Germany. Again, I wish the minister was here, but she's heard that many times. And I am very, very happy to report that after receiving a lot of negative feedback on that, I am very happy, particularly because of that negative feedback, that we now have some legislation that might make it easier. So at least some initial steps have been taken. I know in practice it's nowhere near where it needs to be, but it might be better in future. We need to make sure that we delegate the right steps. I already said that. We need to have multi-actor responsibility is what we call that, that it's sort of we make sure that every actor, so for example, if a doctor uses a clinical advisory system, you know, sorry, the terms are failing me, I really am very tired, that they need to understand sufficiently how it comes to its decisions, but they also cannot be forced to understand it completely, because that's not my job as a doctor. So I need to be sure that they are made well, right? And currently that gets delegated sometimes. You're the end users, that's your responsibility. That's not ours. We make the thing, but you know, You use it in practice. So there's a lot of legal wrangling. Who actually takes responsibility for what? And that's a very, very complicated issue. We need to make sure that we are still able to understand what algorithms do, particularly in medicine. That's no small matter. So we need to make sure where can we sort of leave the black box, because it's not that relevant, but where do we have to have better understanding? And we should probably talk about how much transparency towards patients, for example. So should we actually tell people that part of their diagnosis, for example, is AI-based? I'm actually not that keen on a full transparency scheme, because we don't do that in medicine. We have never done that, and I don't think we should. But of course, there needs to be an appropriate level of transparency, and that's something that needs to be discussed. That's something for the expert committees and for our professional associations. We need to train healthcare professionals for the coming application of these technologies. That's also something even for you developers to think about how to do that best. And we need to make sure that's something for politicians, again, there she is, to prevent negative impact on staffing and to make sure that there will be no replacement of human care. So everybody in this room, you will have a lot of fun with this. And with that, we need to shape this. We need to shape this together. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, dear Professor Boix, thank you very much. Imagine that is when she's tired. You want to see her when she's awake. So thank you very much for that flamboyant speech and for a lot of statements that actually gave answers in terms of responsibility. In one part, you reminded me of that comparison of how we treat robots. The Germans are always afraid of robots because they could replace them or they could take away their jobs. So the German sees the robot as an enemy. The American sees the robot as a slave. The Chinese sees the robot as a colleague, and the Japanese actually see the robot as a potential friend. So, I mean, maybe we need to rethink where we're all coming from, and you made it the right way. We need to use technology for the better of us, not taking away jobs, but making our job a little bit easier. So I think you've underlined all of that and gave a lot of answers. So thank you very much, even after the trip from Japan, that you made it here. So another round of applause for Alena Boix. Thank you. So, in our triplet or triptychon féminin, to put it in the French language, which we're expecting tomorrow when we have guests from Quebec. So I'm now very happy to announce yet another outlier, yet another potential, not potential, but a high potential from the TU in Munich, somebody who is a real expert in the field and somebody who's going to give more answers than raise questions. And exactly when we started about half an hour ago to discuss how to introduce her, we already agreed that, of course, Bavaria never follows, but Bavaria always leads, as we know. So you confused me, Professor Winkelmann, when you said the title has changed. That's always nice for a moderator who has been preparing in his brain a little bit what to say when you switch things. But of course, that's why we're here, and that's what's fun about being live. So Professor Winkelmann usually leads an institute for Human Genomics here at the Technical University, but she's also a vice president of the Technical University, and she's also in a lot of international affairs. And of course, her outreach is far beyond only genomics, and her perspective, as you can see, is a very Bavarian, strong force, thought-provoking idea. So with that, we're going to say Bavaria does not join, Bavaria joins forces. Here should be the slide now, then I could read from it. But Bavaria joins forces with the National Infrastructure for Genomic Medicine. We're not following, we're leading. Now we're going to follow the words of Professor Winkelmann. The floor is yours. See, if you have three ladies talking and there's a Q&A session, everybody tries to eat a little bit of time away so that the Q&A session is actually happening right before that. So with that, I'm not going to steal more time by a long moderation, but I'm just pulling out a quote, and it is actually data protection relevant, and I'm GDPR compliant because she said it on the news, so I'm not breaking anything that shouldn't be there. But I think 3 days later is when you can still use a quote. We all know our minister. She's taking her time to understand things, and she's actually taken the time to listen to people and to in-depth understand. And I think she was asked by a journalist about an approach to something, and I tried to translate it because it was, of course, quoted in proper Bavarian. She said, the only thing that I'm rapidly approaching is 40, which she, of course, is not. But it was her birthday 3 days ago, and I think we can all say, and I'll try to orchestrate this together, we're just going to say happy birthday. So on 3, 2, 1, we're all going to say happy birthday, Frau Staatsministerin, okay? Shall we try this together? A common effort, okay? 3, 2, 1, happy birthday, Frau Staatsministerin. So, I think 3 days later, this is still allowed, and that your brain is everything else but all that is being proven every day. And now we're very much looking forward to your perspective and to the political perspective on the future of medicine. The floor is all yours. Thank you very much.
So hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the congrats, I really appreciate that, and allow me to warmly welcome you to Munich here. I'm very pleased to be here with you at the 5th DigiMed Bayern Symposium. Our session also marks the opening of the 3rd Digital Health Summit. Thank you for inviting me, thank you for having me. The theme of this year's event is big data from patients relevant to understand, prevent and cure disease. You have formulated the theme as a question. It's already clear today that big data analysis, AI and P4 medicine help us to better understand, treat and above all prevent disease. We are only at the beginning of development at all 3 fields. It will be a significant step forwards if we can personalize recommendations for health promotion. The same applies to the treatment of diseases such as cancer. The successes of DigiMed Bayern have led to noticeable progress in cardiovascular diseases. DigiMed Bayern is a true lighthouse project, and I would like to say a big thank you to everyone who is involved. Funding for the DigiMed Bayern project stops at the end of November 2024. However, we want to take the DigiMed Bayern Secure Cloud, a highly secure cloud for healthcare data, and further develop it into the DigiMed Bayern Secure Cloud 2.0 at the Leibniz Supercomputing Center. To this end, the German Heart Center and the LSZ will receive a further 2.7 million euros until the end of 2027. That means we are funding DigiMed Bayern with some 27 million euros in total. Our goal is to keep the wealth of data from DigiMed Bayern usable for health research. In doing so, we are striving for close coordination with the German Heart Center's partners in Finland. Finland is leading the way in the development of the European health data space. Our medical knowledge continues to grow. This, in turn, is driving the development of AI to support health, care and prevention, of course. On top of that, there's demographic change to consider. With fewer workers, the way we work needs to become more efficient. AI enables more efficient working methods. That's why we are massively promoting big data and research for prevention and treatment. We firmly believe that as a key technology, AI can improve our lives and especially our health. We want to exploit this potential. Ladies and gentlemen, we need committed researchers like you to make better use of the enormous opportunities, because without solid databases, AI assessments cannot be reliable. We want to put Bavaria on a strong footing here, while of course maintaining data protection. That's crucial that people have confidence in our high data protection standards. We have to think about data protection and AI security right from the development stage and adhere to them consistently. Only then we will be able to take patients and doctors with us on the digitization journey. And that's my firm belief. Here in Bavaria, we want to retain our leading role, not followers, leaders, in the use of medical data in the future. Filling that role means that, for one thing, we are doing something for people's health. For another, it helps us to promote the development of the healthcare industry, which is already a leading sector in Bavaria today. Alena, at the opening of the Consozial trade fair in Nuremberg, you emphasized that AI has no soul. We are in complete agreement on that. That's why all of us today have to always look closely at how much responsibility we can hand over to our computer colleague to reduce our own burden. We work on the principle that the final decision on treatment is made not by AI, but by humans. In other words, AI can provide advice and point out options for action, but it will continue to be up to the doctor and patient to evaluate and, of course, decide. Ladies and gentlemen, we have already recorded some achievements, but we still have major common goals ahead of us. The DigiMed Bavarian Symposium is an important milestone on the way to reaching them. Thank you very much for your commitment to the project and for today's event. I wish you all continued success for the extensions of DigiMed Bayern and fruitful discussion at the Digital Health Summit 2024. Thank you.
Dear Judith Gerlach, thank you very much for your warm words, for your understanding of how important all this data and all these developments are for the future of Bavaria. As you said, leading, not following. And I'm actually trying to go into an experiment with you, because we need to prove that this is not an avatar. And for this, I would ask Professor Schonkert on stage, who's going to take the microphone from me, because he's supposed to shake your hand to actually congratulate you physically, so we can prove that you were actually here, not only an avatar, and I would like to do so as well. So if we can both shake your hands, then that will be great. Herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Thank you.
So we proved that she was actually here. That's great. Thank you. So with that, I thank you for all three panelists for a wonderful session, for great insights, for great speeches. This is the closing of this part, actually. And now we start into the transition, but of course not without the proper words to close and finalize the DigiMed Symposium. Of course, nobody is being thrown out. This continues straight with the next panel discussion. And then there is a transition, a very smooth transition into the first part of the Digital Health Summit. But first of all, the word is, of course, with Professor Schonkert and Jens Wieler. Thank you.
Yeah, lieber Föhringer, dear guest, thank you so much. Thank you, Frau Gerlach. Thank you, Alena Büchs. Thank you, Juliane Winkelmann. This couldn't have been a better ending for the DigiMed project that the two of us really tried to manage for the last 5 to 6 years. Actually, in the morning, I started with saying how important the ethical and societal view on what we are doing is, and the positive outlook that Alena Büchs This is a bit disrupting, I must say. I mean, that you could have waited 2 more minutes, actually, for that. But anyways, I'm extremely thankful for the positive outlook that you gave from an ethical point of view on the opportunities that we have. It's a must, really, to take opportunities to make life better in our society for our patients. But at the same time, I realize it's a bit a Jekyll and Hyde moment, because from an ethical point of view, you have to point to the risks at the same time. But I guess the enthusiasm that you shared with us will bring us really further into the future to make these opportunities really part of our realities and manage the risk as good as we can. I also want to thank, of course, my Vice President, Juliane Winkelmann, for the wonderful collaboration and mentioning how important the infrastructure that actually Jens Weber signed for the DigiMed Cloud. That comes, of course, with the question also to our political advisors, do we need a public cloud for medical data, or is it that the economic enterprises can do that in a better and perhaps more efficient way? Obviously a difficult question that may need further discussion, and we have the Digital Health Summit to go through some of these discussions. I think from this perspective, a very nice transition that Juliane gave us with the need that we have in these sort of infrastructures. And finally, of course, thanks to the Ministry of Health, to Frau Ministerin Gerlach and the team behind her, who really managed DigiMed very nicely and in a very professional and very supportive way. Not only supportive in a way of financial resources, but also in terms of understanding and giving advice really to make our project as user-friendly and a use for our society. So thank you all for joining us here in this final DigiMed Symposium. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful collaboration, crossing borders, as I said. And with this, I want to hand over to Jens Wieler, who managed the whole thing. And we gave him some gray hair, but it was well invested.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for these nice words. I keep it short. Thank you for the guests, thank you for the speakers, and also for the people behind the scene who helped to make this happen and so successful. And a special thanks to the Health Ministry in Bavaria. I find it very brave to invest taxpayer money into such a visionary project, and I hope we prove further that it's worth the investment. And with that, I'd like to hand over to the Digital Health Summit. Why do you show in this direction? Because of Dominik, of course. And so we switch now the scene. DigiMed Bayern goes to the side. Digital Health Summit comes. But it's still one session, and yeah, Dominik.
Jens, thank you very much. A big round of applause to Jens Wieler.